非常に重要なことですね。
Japanese swordsmiths understood this contradiction.
The triumph of the Japanese sword maker is to combine iron and steel together. Hard material on the edge, more ductile material on the back of the blade. Toughness and hardness.
Two distinct qualities that make the katana among the sharpest and most resilient swords ever made. The blending of the two metals is the next stage in the process. The hard cutting edge, high in carbon, is made from steel which is wrapped around the lower carbon content, more ductile iron that forms the heart of the blade. The overall structure of the outer steel, known as pearlite and ferrite, is very hard. But the Japanese swordsmiths take their swords one step further. The secret of their skill lies in working on the microstructure of the metal.
Down the microscope, what we see is a mixture of the different components. In the interior or towards the back of the blade, we may have pure iron, such as this sample here, and we can see plain white grains of what we call ferrite. What we need, though, for the cutting edge of the blade is something that's harder than just steel. This is a structure known as martensite, and its appearance has been likened to seeing straw on snow. It's very hard material altogether, and it's ideal for the cutting edge of an object.
Never intended as a stabbing weapon, the katana's edge was all important. This led to some unique methods to test a blade for sharpness, particularly during peace times, when if you were a criminal, you might end up as a human guinea pig.
その上宗兵衛もろとも殺めた挙句金品強奪いたし候死罪申しつくべく候よって九段のごとし
Depending on the severity of your crime, you might lose an arm, a leg, or worse. Carefully inscribed on some swords, you can still find records such as the name of the tester, the date, or the number of corpses cut with a single stroke. At Gasan's workshop, delicate work of a different kind is underway. A secret mixture of clay and charcoal powder pasted over the surface will insulate and protect parts of the blade during the hardening process. This insulation line, an art form in itself, is known as the hamon.
The clay is mixed with charcoal. I use it to bring out the line we call hamon. The creation of this line doesn't just show the skill of the swordsmith. It's also an expression of his creativity, and it gives every sword a unique character.
Where the softer steel core meets the hard edge of the blade, a clear line is visible.
Metallurgically, what this is it's a microstructural phase between the martensite and the pearlite that contains elements of both. And when the sword blade is polished, this can be seen as an area that doesn't take on a proper mirror finish.
Gasan darkens the forge so that he can judge by the color of the metal exactly when the sword edge has reached 800 degrees. Too hot and the steel might crack. Too cold and the hardening would fail. Gasan is ready to pull the sword at a moment's notice. Only when the color of the blade turns to the red of the rising sun is the katana ready to receive its soul.
When the blade's then heated to red heat, it's quenched into water, and those parts only covered by a thin layer of clay cool very rapidly and become very, very hard.
During the hardening process, the katana slowly comes to life. Rapid cooling along the edge, only thinly coated in clay, traps the carbon within the steel into a highly stressed state. This forms the sword's cutting edge. The main body of the sword, covered with thicker clay, cools down more slowly and keeps its more ductile quality. These structural changes during the cooling process bend the sword into its iconic shape. Gassan now starts on one of the last stages of creating his sword, the rough polishing. He determined the size and outlines of the blade when he first designed this sword. He now sets to work grinding the contours and begins to bring the edge to its razor sharpness. The sword will eventually go for final polishing to a master polisher, but at this stage, Gassan can see if it has any defects. He would not want to pass anything but a perfect blade to a fellow craftsman. Today, Tokyo is the world's largest metropolis. It is also one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world. And the location of the final stage of a 1,000-year-old craft of sword making. Master Honami is a 14th generation sword polisher, one of the most revered and respected in the world. He will undertake the third and final stage in the sword making process.
The polishing process was the job of a specialist, particularly in later centuries, and his task was to sharpen the sword, to give it its final shape, and also to reveal all the structures that were built into the sword during the forging and hardening process.
Every individual katana sword requires different kinds of special polishing stones. To select these, Master Honami draws on his encyclopedic knowledge of every swordsmith school in Japan. In the 14th century, there were 5 swordsmith schools. Incredibly, there are still 5 today. Good stones are rare and can cost thousands of dollars. He looks carefully for the hidden beauty within every individual sword. After 10 days of polishing, he moves on to one of the finest grades of stone of all. The Yizuya stone is cut small, sometimes no bigger than a grain of rice. Although he keeps the blade's edge turned away from his body, it takes extreme concentration to rub these grains against some of the sharpest steel in the world.
Katanas are very sharp. When I was younger, I used to cut myself a lot. Even these days, I'm still very nervous.
Next, Master Honami begins with what's called the whitening of the blade. This will reveal the line where the hard and soft steel meet. Hour by hour, the polisher exposes the inner beauty of the metal. Now he turns his attention to the tip of the blade.
We say that making the tip is like applying makeup on your face, because the tip of the sword is what you show to the world.
The samurai's katana was not only a beautiful weapon, it was a symbol of power and position in Japan's complex social structure. A samurai actually wore 2 swords at all times as a visible sign of his untouchable authority, the katana and the shorter wakizashi.